we have been informed that there is a new pairing that has been decided for round 3. And yes, it is going to be a cracker of a set. We're going to be having Davide of Italy versus the current reigning world champion, Eduardo Cunha.
This is gonna be an amazing match to watch.
Right.
I don't want to exaggerate this, but this will be a good match to watch. These players, both veteran players, doing well in this tournament, of course, showcasing again. These are the la creme de la creme.
I mean, they're world-class players.
Honestly,
in every single respect, when it comes to the results, when it comes to the consistency, when it comes to the team building, sort of nuances of understanding and reading the meta at the appropriate time in order to try to do the best, to counter it, and not even necessarily counter it. Both of these trainers tend to bring a very well-balanced teams. I think from the past we've seen Davide actually opt to go for a bit more of the offensive side, a bit more of the hyper-offensive archetypes as opposed to Eduardo, which does tend to actually bring more of a balance, but he can switch on the offensive at the appropriate time.
Yeah, that is, of course, a skill on its own, just being able to switch and then being able to go into that offensive. And we do see our trainers here as well. We actually have a bit of information already as well about their teams.
Yes, we do indeed. So from Eduardo's side, we're going to be seeing the Iron Bundle, Garchomp, Talonflame, King Gambit, Amoonguss, and Fluttermane. Whilst over on the other side, Davide is going to be bringing the Dondozo, Great Tusk, Glamora, Iron Bundle, King Gambit, and Tatsugiri.
And on screen we can see their previous achievements as well. For Eduardo, we see the, of course, we see the 2023 World Champion, in 2020 the OCIC runner-up, 2019 having that title of OCIC, and then 2016 the World's Top 4. And then on the other side we have Davide with a World's Top 8 in 2022, 2020 Players Cup 2 runner-up, the 2019 EUIC runner-up, 2017 Leipzig Regional runner-up. A lot of runner-ups, so watch out, he'll run up on you.
He may just take you out for a run for your money when it comes to the amount of pressure that he does exude as a trainer. So being able to actually see both of these trainers, we know that they've got all the achievements, they've got all of the experience. We know this is going to be a very, very moist, spicy matchup, but I'll be quite interested to actually see how these matchups actually go in terms of the team. So a couple of notable things over on Eduardo's side. I think I did actually cover this. It was a Garchomp, right? It wasn't a Dragonite or anything like that. It was sort of following the trails of the success that we've seen. At least Alberto Lara, the runner-up of the OCIC, was able to bring maybe not a Klefki and a Corviknight, but a Garchomp. Seems like there's a bit of a niche perhaps for this Pokemon.
Garchomp, always a Pokemon that has been seeing a lot of usage. It's been just interesting to see because people have been going a lot more to the Great Tusk because, of course, a very good attack stat and very decent defense stat. Just very strong, but Garchomp just being a little bit more divided across its stats. It has a better special defense stat, being able to take moves a bit better, and it's that typing as well, Ground and Dragon, which is so strong as well, which can deal a lot of damage. There's not a lot of things you can switch in on it. It is just one of the, well, pseudo-legendaries, really.
I mean, it's definitely one of those very powerful Pokemon that we have been seeing across the generations. I think it's definitely been a staple throughout all the various different VGC formats we've had over the years. Life Orb is actually the item of choice in this one, so it's just going for 3-move coverage as well as Protect. We've got Dragon Claw, Earthquake, and Stomping Tantrum. You want to be able to have the option of either going for spread damage or having the single target ground type move. Going and being accompanied by Pokemon such as Talonflame and Fluttermane, as well as Iron Bundle, just goes to show that actually Eduardo has decided to try to opt to go a bit more offensive to be able to get that immediate offensive pressure. Just goes a long way for you.
Yeah, exactly. Iron Bundle having, of course, that Ice Wind, trying to make sure to have some sort of speed control, while this Fluttermane itself being a very interesting set. It has the booster energy. It is holding booster energy, which most of the time you see on the Iron Bundle, but this time it is a Calm Mind. It is a Calm Mind Fluttermane, which is very interesting to see. You do have that Amoonguss for possible redirection, but a Flutter Mane with a speed boost, and then a possible special defense and special attack boost, that is scary to have across from you on the field.
It really is, because there's a lot of bulk when it comes to Flutter Mane and its special defense. Sure, it's quite brittle when it comes to its physical defense. However, if you're going to be able to actually prioritize and redirect any sort of physical attacks coming out from your opponent's side of the field, that is the most ideal scenario that Eduardo will be looking to go for. Amoonguss, we already know Amoonguss is just an amazing Pokemon. There's a reason why it is always at the top of the usage charts, even in formats that do include legendaries. A bit of a callback, I think, to Incineroar, which yeah, thankfully is not actually in attendance.
Just had a flashback.
Just yeah, it was a bit. It's a bit vicious of a flashback.
No, exactly. And on the other side, we do have the team here, of course, of Davide. We have the Great Tusk opposed to the Garchomp, but this variant a little bit different, not running Earthquake, but running Ice Spinner. This is a move that has been run a bit more because there's a lot of Terra flying and such, trying to make sure that you can hit them. We have, of course, the Glimmora and Tatsugiri Dondozo combo, which has been seeing a lot more usage these days because you have seen it just trying to poison your opponent, and then the Dondozo trying to do as much damage as possible as well.
Yeah, and I think we actually saw Glimmora, pretty much the same set actually, ran by Bus in the previous round too. Having the Mortal Spin, like you mentioned, is really, really nice as a niche. You don't necessarily have to try to rely on Toxic Debris in that case. You can actually set up some manual poison status. If, for example, you've got a Terra type where that actually resists the Dondozo matchup, you could do quite well and actually wait for it to be whittled down slowly yet surely in order to accomplish your goal. In this case, it is a grass type Glimmora. We do have a couple of things worth noting too. Tatsugiri is the Choice Scarf variant. No soak action going makes a lot of sense. You don't have a very strong grass type on your side of the field. So making sure you have the additional coverage with a Dragon Pulse in case you do not want to miss a Draco Meteor and all you need to do is connect and land is most optimal and going to be the choice of play when it comes to that Pokemon.
Exactly, and we actually see a similar Pokemon, like we see the King Gambit on both sides as well, and both are having that Terra Fire typing. On one hand, we do have the one with Assault Vest and one with Safety Goggles, but the one with Assault Vest also running that Terra Blast, trying to have as much of a strong fire move to bring out the threats that King Gambit normally couldn't be able to handle maybe a little bit well. And just that Terra Fire type also very nice for potential Will-O-Wisp because Arcanine has been played a lot.
It's true.
So you need to watch out for those possible Will-O-Wisps. You'd like to avoid them.
Or something like a Talonflame, right?
Exactly.
Anything you get to avoid, even Intimidate, or there's no proc of the Defiant boost or ability. And I think in this scenario, it does fare quite well against any sort of Torkoal matchups. But talk about matchups. We've got Game 1 leads out for both of these trainers. On the right-hand side, we've got Davide Gader with a Booster Energy procced Iron Bundle, heightening its speed, accompanied by the Glimmora. On the other hand, we've got Eduardo on the left-hand side with the Amoonguss and Garchomp lead. Redirection straight off the bat.
Yeah, redirection might be needed because Garchomp is, of course, quite weak too. That Ice type is super duper weak, as some people would say. It is a very scary situation for Garchomp, but it has also that Terra Fire as well, which could be using that. But then you have the next mind game. Iron Bundle is also a water type with that normally has the possibility to have Hydro Pump. Of course, this Iron Bundle itself doesn't have one, but the Glimmora still is there as well to attack with a Power Gem or a possible Earth Power.
Yeah, exactly, and I think quite a decisive turn 1 lead here. Eduardo was just about to run out of time as we see the Amoonguss switching out for the Flutter Mane right now. So wanting to be able to get into gear, get that additional offensive pressure on the field going into turn 2. We see the special attack actually being heightened after the Booster Energy activates for the Flutter Mane. And we are going to be getting the first Terrestrial of this set. It's going to be the Garchomp. It is going to go for the Fire type.
Yeah, now with the Fire type, being able to make sure that the Ice moves from this Iron Bundle will not do a lot of damage. Trying to predict this is a bit hard for the Glimmora, and we see actually another Terra type activate with the Glimmora going into that Grass type and trying to make sure that that Garchomp will not be able to use any sort of ground move super effectively, trying to secure a KO there. So the Iron Bundle itself going for a protect here, trying to see what is going on.
Yeah, exactly. Just wanting to scout out the situation as, oh, it's a very nice defensive play there. The Dragon Claw was trying to target down into it, at least to, perhaps with the Life Orb, may have likely taken it down to just beneath half of its HP. Mortal Spin does come out and does connect on both of the Pokemon on Eduardo's side, of course. Poison status is going to start whittling down this HP as Rough Skin is going to actually deal a bit of chip damage onto the Glamora. However, the important thing right now for Davide is the fact that Eduardo's 2 Pokemon are already on a timer and we're just getting into turn 2, apologies.
That's all right. We have, of course, being poisoned is something that you think to yourself, oh, this is not that bad, because normally you have the toxic ailment that starts to rack up. But this poison damage might put other Pokemon just in range for other possible KOs. Like, for example, this Glamora is able to go for a potential third power onto this Garchomp, which might not have been a KO before, but thanks to this poison, might be just in range for that as well.
Yeah, and I think you've got to also take into consideration the Life Orb recoil, right? So that is going to be an additional stack of a drop on the HP of the Garchomp. So the Garchomp is very limited and needs to be accurate with the type of moves that it goes for with its usage of its longevity. Freeze Dry goes into the Flutter Mane. I'm not going to deal as much damage. Dazzling Gleam on the return. Being able to deal substantial amount of damage in combination with the Dragon Claw onto the Glamora is not enough to pick up the KO. We do have Toxic Debris, which has now been set onto the field. Power Gem into the Fire-type Garchomp is enough to pick up the KO, and all of a sudden, Eduardo is not looking to be in such an advantageous position. We've got the Garchomp is down. We've got a Flutter Mane that has been poisoned and is taking recurring damage at the end of each turn, as well as the fact that Eduardo no longer has Terra as an option for the remainder of this Game 1, even though Amoonguss does come in and does actually do a good job, gets rid of the Toxic Debris over on his side.
Yeah, this is, of course, a trait that every poison type have to be able to remove any sort of toxic spikes on your end of the field if you switch it in when it's already laying down. So now gotta be careful not to put any more down. Of course, Glamora's ability only activates when it's hit by a physical move. So that means this Flutter Mane is actually looking pretty good because it is still faster than it and can hit it possibly for a KO, making sure that there will not be any more kind of toxic spikes.
Yeah, exactly that. And even though the Iron Bundle is still in a position where it can try to get some damage off, it's the fact that we've seen this Flutter Mane is quite difficult to get rid of, especially next to Redirection if you want to go for any single target type damage into it. But Freeze Dry is actually going to come out into the Amoonguss. No Redirection from the Amoonguss, and wow, no need as it seems, as a Dazzling Gleam, of course, will be more than enough to pick up a double KO onto Davide's side. So even though we felt that the turn 2 situation wasn't exactly the most optimal for Eduardo, being able to have that Flutter Mane with the Pollen Puff support of the Amoonguss by its side is quite a good position for him.
This is a very good position. Now, David suddenly lost his 2 Pokemon. We probably know what is coming in, being that Dondozo and Tatsugiri, trying to make sure that the poison damage that is racking up will secure KOs for this Dondozo to make sure that everything will go down. Of course, Eduardo played it extremely well by keeping his Amoonguss still alive, by switching in, removing any toxic spikes, and now it can threaten as well with any potential spores as well to this Dondozo, because the Terra has been used already on the Glamora side as well.
Yeah, and I think even though we felt like, oh no, there's so much pressure and advantage going on from Eduardo's side, this is the threat of the Dondozo-Tatsugiri combination. If you're able to bring it onto the field, both of them together, of course, you can sort of reap all of the benefits of this Omni-boosted Pokemon now. I think what Davide is having to do is just try to make sure that he can prioritize on dealing as much damage as he can. Likely can be the case of going for Earthquake here. There's not a lot of options. There's no substitute on Dondozo. So it is going to be taking that Shadow Ball damage. No special defensive drops there. Wave Crash in hopes of picking up the KO. It does so. Critical hit. Must have mattered, surely. And that cute little mushroom is out of the game. That could be very, very crucial going into this, because the Flutter Mane, it's not going to be able to pick up a KO the following turn.
That might have been very detrimental there, because that Amoonguss was looking so good just a turn before. Critical hits can, of course, always happen, but Eduardo does happens to still have his Iron Bundle. Iron Bundle still being able to threaten the Dondozo with any possible freeze dries. We saw that the Fluttermane, of course, outspeeding the Dondozo, did quite a bit of chip to the Dondozo, because, of course, Dondozo is the only one on the field. You gotta try and keep hitting that as much as possible to get that down, to get that little Tatsugiri out as well.
And we're going to see a natural protect coming out from Davide. So it just makes sense. You want to be able to preserve as much HP as possible thanks to the leftovers, recovery at the end of each turn, freeze dry as well. Might be a calm mind coming out from the Fluttermane here, but then again, it wouldn't make sense because it's unaware on Dondozo. So just going to go for the substitute. That actually makes a lot of sense. You want to be able to sort of limit the potential of damage coming out from the Dondozo. So a very nice play there in anticipation of a passive play from Davide.
Yeah, this actually guarantees like 2 turns of this Fluttermane actually being able to put out the damage on this Dondozo still, because we already saw that it did outspeed, so it has this turn. Even though if substitute gets broken, it will still be able to survive and go out with another hit onto this Dondozo. As we see the Iron Bundle actually going for a protect, trying to see what this Dondozo is going to do.
Yeah, just trying to scout out here. I think Fluttermane is maybe hoping to pick up a special defensive drop. Of course, unaware, doesn't actually interact in that way where the opposing Pokemon can ignore Dondozo's drops, as we are going to be seeing the Earthquake. Going to be breaking a substitute here, right? So Iron Bundle, the situation that it is, it just wants to make sure that it is preserving its Focus Sash to allow it in a position where both the Fluttermane in combination with the Iron Bundle are going to be able to dispatch of this Dondozo with a double up, which I think from this range might just be enough.
Yeah, because you have to realize this Tatsugiri still has to come out as well. And Tatsugiri is not just any weak Pokemon. It still is a big threat because it is carrying that Choice Scarf, which makes it so that any moves that he gets a bit faster. And could potentially, if this Fluttermane does manage to faint from this poison, means that this Iron Bundle does might lose its sash and not outspeed the Tatsugiri because of that.
Exactly. And I think this is a sort of situation where you just need to identify your win conditions as much as possible. I think Davide's win condition right here may be a double protect.
It is time.
It's not necessary because I think within that range you should be able to just avoid getting knocked out, and I think that's what Davide is actually opting to go for. We shall see. Freeze Dry goes into the Dondozo. Shadow Ball. Is this enough to pick up the KO? It's going to be close. Oh! And it does not. Dondozo, as a direct retaliation move, goes for the Earthquake, picks up the KO onto this Fluttermane, does bring the Iron Bundle down to half or just below half of its HP. And we know, of course, even if the Dondozo does go out right now, there is a Choice Scarf, cute little Tatsugiri curly form that is going to be popping out of Dondozo's mouth and it's going to say, right, let's get down to business. Let me finish up this game.
Yeah, that is exactly what we saw there. Was an amazing play by Davide. He knew what his Dondozo could take, and looking at the situation, just wanting to make sure that his turn wouldn't be lost necessarily, that he was able to just KO that. But now the Tatsugiri is out with that Choice Scarf, Iron Bundle going for that protect. Tatsugiri, of course, seeing what move it will go for. It does have a lot of moves, but Dragon Pulse being the move of choice, just going for that accuracy. Iron Bundle, of course, not the most bulkiest on the special defense side, on the special side, but yeah. Possible dodge? Nope.
Nope, no way to dodge the Dragon Pulse, as it is going to be landing every single time. And of course does award Davide that Game 1 win through what was a bit of a back and forth between both trainers, right?
There were a lot of different situations where it was very close, because at first we had that Garchomp that we mentioned that could go for that Terra Fire, where we were thinking this is a very good position for it because the Iron Bundle will not be able to hit it with a water move. We still had to but then the Glimmora being able to go for that Terra Grass, making sure that it would not feint to any type of ground move to this Garchomp either. That just shows how many levels of thinking you need to apply to this Terra mechanic as well.
Yeah, exactly that. There's a lot of different levels that you require to actually process. So going into this game 2, of course, we've got a scenario where Edu, even though it seemed like mid-game, was able to regain a bit of pressure from his side of the field. I think Davide was in a very good position to actually stall it out. You know, we know the power of leftovers Dondozo. We've seen it in the past. It does incredibly well. And if put in the right position, it just needs to get a couple of protect stalls, get its recovery of HP just that tiny bit out to avoid of the range of getting that KO onto it and just dispatch huge amounts of damage. And it's quite nice, that interaction, having the Tatsugiri just waiting in the fold in the back saying, okay, cool. At least I know I've got Dragon Pulse. Yeah. There's no chance I will miss this unless I do not have it. And I think that's sort of the understanding with the team building of actually why you want to introduce that.
Yeah, exactly. It was interesting to see because Eduardo was playing so well as well. With, for example, the Pollen Pluff play, trying to make sure that his Fluttermane was able to survive any oncoming move, and possibility to go for a substitute, trying to make sure that there were 2 turns and a half to pass for this Dondozo. It was an amazing play to make. It was the understanding a bit further of Davide going for that more safe play of just protecting that one turn, being able to substitute, just making sure that was next level thinking, so to say.
It was. It's because of the fact that you understand what your opponent has to do. You want to try to take advantage of a potential relatively safe play. I think Davide does always want to try to get as much recovery because it makes sense and it's the most optimal play to regain it in order to avoid the damage rolls like we mentioned. So Eduardo just going ahead and actually taking advantage of that makes complete sense because you still got the partner Pokemon pressure that was on the field too. So going into this game too, I feel like Davide doesn't have a reason to change up his Pokemon from his side of the field, but I say that.
You say that, but apparently it does happen. We do have the same leads, though, from Eduardo, going from Garchomp, Amoonguss, while on the other side we have the Great Tusk and Dondozo. Now, of course, with Dondozo on the field, you always have that threat of that Tatsugiri switching in instead of that Great Tusk. And if you target, for example, the Great Tusk this turn, it might just hit nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you've got to take into consideration, is there any sort of way that we can redirect, from Edu's point of view, any of the highly offensive moves that are going to be coming out from Davide's side? We know that Davide's Great Tusk does have Ice Spinner. It can freely target into the Amoonguss, and maybe in combination, go ahead and pick up any sort of damage that can be dealt onto maybe past its HP's worth, half its HP's worth. But it is feeling a bit pressured here because of the oncoming Spore. So as a result, we're going to be seeing the Tatsugiri actually make an appearance.
Yep, the Tatsugiri going inside of Dondozo's mouth, meaning that if you targeted that Tatsugiri, you will hit nothing. And that Dondozo now getting his boost as well to all of its stats, trying to make sure that it can do as much damage as possible. Now, Amoonguss is still on the field, and Amoonguss is, of course, a Pokemon that can use Spore, but there's the answer, of course.
Yeah.
You have that Dondozo with that Terra Grass, trying to prevent being spored as well.
I mean, if you don't have a grass type Pokemon at the current moment, just make one. You got the Terrestrial shards, so you might as well just collect them and put them onto the appropriate Pokemon, as we're going to be seeing with his Dondozo Dragon Claw from the Life Orb. Garchomp goes ahead and targets into it, but for its endeavors, it's going to get the Retaliation Wave Crash KO dealt onto it, even though as it's going to be parting away, it is going to be dealing a bit of chip damage thanks to its Rough Skin ability, but no Spore. We actually see, oh, the side Pollen Puff. So if that actually would have targeted the Dondozo, it would have done respectable amounts of chip damage onto it due to the grass type weakness as opposed to the bug type Pollen Puff. But there wasn't a lot, I feel, that Eduardo could have done in that situation. That's sort of the strategy and the structure of this Tatsugiri Dondozo threat.
Exactly. Now the Iron Bundle is able to come in with that freeze out. We have seen that it has provided a lot of good damage earlier in the but now the Dondozo itself, still being relatively healthy, has that option, of course, to protect, to eat its snacks a bit more, of healing that damage. Amoonguss, of course, not expecting the Garchomp suddenly to be gone, looking to the left, and whoa, it's gone.
It's gone, apparently. But we're going to be seeing the Iron Bundle does try to target down Freeze Dry into the Dondozo. You want to be able to deal as much damage as possible, and the Pollen Puff there, the side Pollen Puff, should I say, just in case that Dondozo opted to go for the attack. So Davide just playing a bit more passively. Once again, you got Protect. Why not utilize it in order to regain a bit of HP and avoid any sort of scenario where you get surprise KO'd and then spored it into the Tatsugiri?
Exactly, and we actually see like a different play of Dondozo as well, because in the last game it was kept in the back, trying to make sure to try to KO Pokemons that have been already poisoned and a bit chipped as well. But now, just going all out, Dondozo is putting in the work. We see the protect from the Iron Bundle. When the Dondozo wanted to go for a Terra Blast there into that protect, so that means this Amoonguss is doing a bit of the work here with that Polypuff onto that Dondozo. Still respectable damage.
Very nice play from both players. I think Eduardo, understandably, because of the element of the open team sheets, you're able to be a bit more methodical when it comes to the flow charting against certain types of matchups. So being able to actually protect from the Terra Blast, the Grass Terra Blast, from any sort of KO that can be most definitely picked up from this Dondozo, and dealing a bit of chip damage is quite nice and goes a long way in order to once again bring it back into the freeze dry range. That is the goal that Eduardo is looking for. Amoonguss, on the other hand, it doesn't have a lot it can actually do against this grass type Terra Dondozo. You can't redirect because of course grass types are immune to any sort of powder moves coming out, so all you can do is just deal as much damage as you like, unless there's going to be a switch out, but no switch outs.
We do see a lot of damage onto that Dondozo, but missing out the K. We do see the Terra Blast now probably going into that Iron Bundle, doing a lot of damage, but wait, I'm still alive. It's still there. That 1 HP thanks to that Focus Sash. Now Amoonguss going for that Polypuff. I totally expect the Amoonguss to go for the KO. I was like, is Amoonguss gonna go for it? But healing quite a bit of damage back. And now the Dondozo is quite low, can't really recover enough with its snacks, with the leftovers by protecting. Iron Bundle is pretty guaranteed to be able to knock that out with a freeze dry. And when you knock out Dondozo as well, the Tatsugiri comes out and can't click any moves as well.
Yeah, I think this is actually the most optimal result for Eduardo not going for the KO onto the Dondozo, because you allow the Iron Bundle to do so the subsequent turn and then get that very free Spore into the Tatsugiri once it does pop out of Dondozo's mouth. So in this scenario, I don't think there's much that Davide can do to avoid that from actually playing out, because of the fact that Iron Bundle is now always going to, naturally speaking, be faster than the fastest Omni-boosted Dondozos, as the Freeze Dry does come out, does pick up the KO indeed. Right now, it's just going to be very slow play. The question is, how can Davide bring this back, knowing that the Tatsugiri is going to get put to sleep now, thanks to the Spore?
Yeah, a lot of players have had this encounter before where their Tatsugiri would be put asleep, and they'd be running Sleep Talk, for example, on their Tatsugiri. Right. Unfortunately, now for Davide, it doesn't really run that, but now has to bring out the next Pokemon, being that King Gambit, who can threaten actually quite a lot on this Iron Bundle and this Amoonguss, because that King Gambit also has the safety goggles, not really caring about what that Amoonguss does with his spores right now. And on the other hand, we have the Iron Bundle that only has the reliable move of Hydro Pump, really hitting it decently hard, or else it has to be a freeze dry.
It doesn't have Encore, right? And this is a situation where Encore would be quite nice if you're able to try to lock your opponent into Sucker Punch, anticipating that coming out from the other side of the field. But the fact that we've got the Iron Bundle, it's just above half of its HP. It does have relatively respectable physical defense, however, its HP is lacking, so I'm not sure if it is quite enough for it to be able to survive. We're going to be seeing the Tatsugiri try to move first. Hydro Pump does go out into the King Gambit, no Sucker Punch. The reliable Iron Head maybe trying to get a flinch and does so, but in this scenario, I'm not 100% sure. Maybe that must have been a read from Davide's side, anticipating the switch out over from Edu's, hence why there was no targeting dealt onto the Iron Bundle, maybe anticipating that protect slow play.
It was interesting to see because, of course, that Amoonguss can't redirect a Sucker Punch, so you are pretty guaranteed to get a Sucker Punch off onto the Iron Bundle itself, but maybe predicting a protect, as I would say. Tatsugiri already haven't been turned asleep, meaning it can possibly wake up right now, and it does still carry that Choice Scarf, and we know that it outspeeds the Pokemon, but actually we do see a switch out from Davide's side.
Ooh, Great Tusk is going to be making it onto the field. It's wanting to deal a lot of respectable damage in the subsequent turns. Sucker Punch is not enough to pick up the KO. Onto this Iron Bundle, it connects a second Hydro Pump in a row. Does not pick up the KO, and we see the Spore going into the slot of which used to have that sleepy little cute Tatsugiri, but now it's got the equally cute Great Tusk, but in another way, but I still love it.
No, yeah, it's extremely. Now there's a big issue because the Iron Bundle has the possibility to go for a Protect, Sucker Punch not working. Then the King Gambit is actually in range for his Amoonguss to put in some work.
Yeah.
They can possibly go for a Pollen Puff, maybe predicting that going for that Iron Head and trying to flinch there. But your Great Tusk being asleep as well is not a position you would like to have because the Tatsugiri, well, being asleep as well.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of things to take into consideration when it comes to the mind games as well. We saw that Davide tried to go for that raid in the previous 2 turns, was actually able to pick up the KO onto the Sucker Punch, so the Iron Bundle did attempt to go and deal damage, maybe of course pick up the King Gambit KO. Great Tusk, naturally speaking, will take its mandatory turn, and Pollen Puff from the Amoonguss, really nice there to actually break the Focus Sash. Gets a bit of a little critical hit just to add to the, yeah, a bit cheeky, add to the damage tally, but the important thing for Eduardo is to be able to bring this Flutter Mane in. So not the best scenario. You want to avoid a Sucker Punch from the King Gambit. This may be a sort of prediction on whether does the Amoonguss try to pick up the KO onto the King Gambit, or adversely, does Davide actually anticipate that turn, not try to move at all and protect.
It is also interesting to see because that, of course, it has the access to Substitute, doing quite a bit of damage with Sucker Punch, but not a KO. And we do see the Dazzle taking a double knockout, meaning only that Tatsugiri is left. And that Tatsugiri has only taken 1 turn of sleep. It has the possibility of awakening itself, but right now, this Amoonguss also Pollen Puff the Flutter Mane, meaning it is quite bulky and very much a big threat, even though this Tatsugiri might move faster. Securing a KO on both of these Pokemon is going to be a bit tough, and you have to wake up.
It's excellent board positioning, I think, from Eduardo, just making sure that he's relying on the late game sweep from the Flutter Mane. Pollen Puff, constant support from this Amoonguss. I think that's pretty much everything it was doing. Pollen Puff, I don't think we ever saw a redirection. We saw the Spore as well. The fact that Davide did not have a direct, immediate way of getting rid of the Amoonguss seemed to be to his detriment in this game too.
That is true. The Amoonguss was posing a threat, even though no redirection, just that Spore threat and Pollen Puff doing a bit of damage sometimes. Yeah. But on the other hand, just being able to heal the somewhat bulkier Pokemon, because like the Iron Bundle as well, just making sure to Pollen Puff that so you can get Sucker Punched 2 times is an amazing play to see for that long game, because what if the King Gambit is there? Let me real quick heal up my Iron Bundle to make sure, even though this Dondozo was able to take my Focus Sash, still being able to make sure in the later game that the Iron Bundle was able to survive. The Sucker Punch as we've seen.
Yeah, exactly. And I think in this scenario, there's a lot to take into thoughts going into Game 3. Eduardo did a really good job with the Amoonguss. We saw in Game 1 the Wave Crash critical hit from Omni Booster Dondozo. Did pick up the KO onto Amoonguss, which was just a bit above of its half of the HP range. So can we find a way from Davide's side to get rid of this Amoonguss? I think that is the main key player you need to, naturally speaking, as such a good support Pokemon, being able to threaten both Spores into that slot, have redirection options, as well as get Pollen Puff healing onto your side of the field. You really need to try to get rid of it, and I think that's why Davide at some point was anticipating the Protect coming up from the Iron Bundle Game 2, was trying to at least start dealing damage onto this Amoonguss, because that is what you need to get rid of. Sure, you've got Grass, Terra-type Dondozo, cool. You've got Earthquake, neutral. Okay, it's not direct single target damage, it's not going to be dealing as much as it would like. You've got Safety Goggles, King Gambit. However, do you have a direct way to deal with the Amoonguss? No, you need to try to get passive damage dealt over time in multiple turns.
Yeah, exactly. And it is kind of hard to see. And we are actually going right into game 3. We have the Great Tusk and Dondozo, the same lead for Davide right now. But a switch up for Eduardo, going for that Flutter Mane. Turn 1 this time around with the Photosynthesis activating its special attack a little bit higher. And the Garchomp also being back as well. Still showing that it can still pose a bit of threat.
Oh, 100%. Garchomp is not a threat to ignore. I think in this scenario, we've got quite an offensive lead on Eduardo's side. You could just go straight for the damage. I think Davide does have the bulky, tanky Dondozo, so may actually see a switch in here, try to get some equal amount of damage dealt onto both of Edu's team. Whilst we are going to be seeing the Amoonguss switch in, yeah, I think there's going to be the Tatsugiri. Makes sense. If you're able to actually get Earthquake out right now at +2, this could be really nice for Davide to start chipping away onto that Amoonguss.
Exactly. Now with the Commander, of course, getting all those boosts, we have already seen that the Dondozo with a Wave Crash was able to KO that Garchomp in one hit with that very powerful Wave Crash. New move, very strong. Always like to see it. But we do see that Flutter Mane is still faster and is able to go for that substitute, that little cheeky substitute in the front there, making sure that even when the Dondozo Earthquakes, that it will survive for one turn to see what David, his plan was, what his game plan. But now with that reveal and the Amoonguss in, David has to see what his next play will be.
Yeah, and I think with that play, you can't go too wrong because we know that this is a booster energy Flutter Mane. There's no Life Orb, additional recoil. That will be just tallying your HP down even further at the end of each turn. So being able to go for the passive play, if, for example, there's no attack that comes out from Davide's side, at least you're able to set up a substitute for free. But we have the Dondozo terrestrializing into the Grass Terror. It wants to make sure it can avoid everything that this mischievous Amoonguss may be up to, as it is going to be protecting. But the important thing right here will be the Shadow Ball going into the Dondozo. It's not going to deal as much damage, but still, you got to remember, everybody, this is respectable damage. This is a +2 Omni boosted Dondozo, so it's very tough to take down, especially with the leftovers attributed to it. Flutter Mane, though, actually survives on a sliver of health.
That is amazing to see that the Flutter Mane still being able to survive. Bringing now the Flutter Pain with the next Shadow Ball incoming into that Dondozo. Amoonguss, of course, with that Protect, trying to guarantee that the Dondozo has to still choose, because we have seen in the first game that a Wave Crash wasn't enough. We do see the Shadow Ball from the Flutter Mane into the Dondozo, doing quite a bit of damage, and now another Earthquake into this Amoonguss, and Amoonguss still holding on, but I don't believe it will survive a third one.
No, I don't think so. It's put within range, but guess what? It does have the Citrus Berry recovery, so it may well just be able to. Pollen Puff coming out here will be dealing some respectable damage, and I think Edu's idea right now is to have the Iron Bundle in the back, be able to play a bit around a similar fashion and strategy as Game 2, where we had the interactions of Iron Bundle, having Pollen Puff support on its side whilst getting those freeze dries. So probably going to play out the same way. Couple next turns, there's likely going to be protects coming from the Dondozo. You want to be able to get that tiny bit of HP recovery to get outside of the zone of those freeze-dry KOs and follow-ups with the Pollen Puffs.
Yeah, this is a bit of a different situation now, of course, because Amoonguss is a bit lower. First game, you were able to KO that thanks to that crit, so thanks to that Wave Crash crit. So we don't actually quite know how much a single target Wave Crash +2 Dondozo would do against this Amoonguss. Very much, it is still a resistant move. It can definitely survive. The Amoonguss can go for a potential Pollen Puff while the Dondozo goes for an attacking move, trying to chip as much on this Dondozo so that the Iron Bundle is able to secure any kind of KO as well.
Oh, so Edu making a really nice play. You want to get that Regenerator ability activated to preserve and re-enhance its HP in the back. Freeze Dry here, not enough to pick up the KO onto the Dondozo, but it does pick up the freeze. Will it thaw is the real question, and it does not, which quite nicely places that Grass Terror type Dondozo on a bit of a platter here, up to Edu to take full advantage of with the offensive Garchomp on the field too.
Yeah, this is suddenly became a very bad position because the Iron Bundle is faster, is able to kill his Onozo. That means that Tatsugiri will come out, and guess what else is on the field? It is that Garchomp! And it has a Dragon move, so this Tatsugiri will pop out, will not do any attacks. So that's 2 Pokemon that will probably be down now because this Garchomp is carrying that Livor, and the Tatsugiri down as well. That was a very big turn. Unfortunate freeze, but that is, of course, something that happens. And now the Iron Bundle still has its Focus Sash as well.
It does. I think in that scenario, realistically, it won't change as much, I don't think. The only main crucial thing is the fact that, and you pointed it out there, Shimon, was the Focus Sash being preserved on the Iron Bundle. This allows more room for the Iron Bundle to express its artistic ice-type moves onto both of Davide's Pokemon, but the Kingambit is something that you need to be aware of. You can't exactly Icy Wind into it, as you want to avoid the Defiant proc to just give it a bolster of +2 stages in its attack.
Yeah, it is interesting because the Kingambit, of course, it has a Terrifier. It can't do that anymore. It will still be hit by this Earthquake, possibly. But on the other hand, we do know that this Kingambit actually has Protect. So, with a well-timed Protect, you might be able to find some way to try and chip as much damage as possible to make sure that, for example, the Sash on the Iron Bundle would be gone. But we do see a switch out from the Garchomp into that Amoonguss, and now we'll enjoy seeing that Regenerator looking almost fully healthy, while the Iron Bundle just going for a Protect, seeing what Davide is gonna do here.
Yeah, so a defensive play from Edu, and I think Davide is getting a bit of a sheet out of his book in that regard. Headlong Rush, though, really good targeting there. I absolutely love that from Davide. You're making sure that you deal as much damage as you can, obviously onto the Garchomp, but in case Edu wants to play a bit more defensively, that we know he really likes getting a couple of very strategic switches going over time, especially in the latter half of a set. Given the fact that you want to be able to have that additional step onto your opponent, you want to ensure the subsequent turns are in your favor in regards to your board state positioning.
Exactly, and we do see that, of course, the Great Tusk has that Focus Sash, is gonna survive no matter what move, one time at least. It has to be hit twice, and it is still an interesting position, so to say. The Kingambit can try to go for a double Protect, but we do see the Freeze Dry into the Great Tusk, of course, thanks to that Focus Sash, being able to hold on and probably retaliating just in a second with a Headlong Rush, doing a lot of damage with a critical hit, only 1 HP remaining. What is this Kingambit gonna do? Is it going for the Amoonguss, or is it going for any kind of defensive play that it didn't go for Protect? Never mind. Went for the Cataclysm onto the Amoonguss and securing that KO as well.
It does pick up the KO onto the Amoonguss, so I think what we're noticing here is the fact that Edu really understands that he needs to have the Garchomp in order to secure his win condition. You want to avoid any sort of damage as much as possible. You need to get rid of that Kingambit. That is the main threat at play. There may be a bit of a potential Protect play coming out from Edu's Iron Bundle. That sort of makes sense unless you're expecting and anticipating a Protect from the Great Tusk. I think what this Garchomp has to do is just absolutely get rid of the Kingambit. You've got the Stomping Tantrum. We know for a fact that there's no longer any Terra-type potential from Davide's side, as we had seen previously, the Grass-type Terra on the Dondozo. So this is going to be a bit of a battle of reads. We're coming out now to the final stretch of this set. A lot of reads going on, a lot of experience between both of these players, and we do have an Ice-type Terra on that Iron Bundle.
Yeah, Iron Bundle going for that Ice-type Terra, trying to deal as much damage as possible with this Freeze Dry, and doing that, exactly that. No Sucker Punches. We did see the Protect from the Great Tusk. Freeze Dry doing a bit of damage. It is still a Kingambit, has a respectable amount of special defense, while the Garchomp, with no matter looking at the Iron Bundle, going for a strong Earthquake and getting the KO on the Kingambit.
Critical hit!
Wow, and meaning that only the Great Tusk is left, and David looks quite defeated there for a second, because that is unfortunate, a freeze and a crit like that, because it is a bulky Pokemon, that Kingambit.
That's tough, man. That is absolutely tough. I think tough or Tusk, but you know what I mean. But I think in that scenario, so Edu wanted to try to get as much damage dealt onto that Kingambit as possible. allowing the Garchomp to maybe pick up the KO with a double up. I'm not sure. The damage rolls are very, very close. This is a Life Orb Garchomp. Let us not forget, however, the Earthquake is not going to be at its maximum damage output due to the fact that it is a spread damage that is based on all 4 Pokemon found on the field. If that was a Stomping Tantrum focus, surely that would 100% pick up the KO at that range, especially because this is a Garchomp which has a lot of attack, especially bolstered by the Life Orb.
Exactly. It was very interesting to see. It's just gone a bit downhill for it's just been going a bit downhill starting from the freeze from the Dondozo, because you want to have that chip onto that Iron Bundle, making sure that the Focus Sash wouldn't be intact and trying to just be able to deal with that especially.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things that happened during that set. I think we initially saw all of the pressure come out from Edu's side. He did really well in that game 1. He secured his spot. And then we saw in game 2, Davide actually did rely a bit more onto the Dondozo, right?
Yeah, exactly. Dondozo wasn't as much as a player in the back. It was immediately trying to be the big threat, because in the first game it was a bit shaky, because trying to make sure with the Mortal Spell, trying to get all the poison, that Amogus being a giant thorn actually for that strategy.
Of course, the Wave Crash critical hit that allowed Davide to win the game 1, get rid of the Amogus, and then game 2, Edu started trying to make a comeback.
Like seeing that David adjusted correctly, making sure that just put out the Dondozo first turn, try to change the strategy a bit more, because that Amogus is a bit annoying for him to deal, as we've seen.
It was very annoying.
It was very hard to deal for him. He had to commit a Terra type to his Dondozo to try to deal as much damage as possible. So yeah, trying to deal with that Amogus on its own was hard, especially when you only have the Dondozo onto the field.
Well, yeah, because it's like you said, you needed to dedicate the Grass Terror on the Dondozo. You want to get rid of any sort of redirection or spores going into it. But what I found was that Davide was sort of stuck in that mode where he was able to essentially get taken advantage of from Edu, as long as Edu had a really good board state going into the subsequent turn. And we saw he did incredibly well. He had the pressure with the Iron Bundle and the Amoongus. At some point, obviously, started picking up in game 3 that, okay, no, I need to preserve my Amoongus a bit more, get the Regenerator switch going. And then it was all the battle of, okay, I know Garchomp is now my win condition. I've seen King Gambit. I know the final 2 Pokemon. Let me play this smart. Let me play this slow. And he was able to go ahead and get that round 3 and catapult himself to 3-0.
Exactly. It's board positioning that is important, and that is the thing. If you lead off with Dondozo Tatsugiri, you can't really make any more switches. That is your game state. You have the Dondozo and the Tatsugiri. You can't switch out, and you have to try and play with that Soul Dondozo, which is boosted though, but you have to try and whittle down your opponent so your last 2 Pokemon can come out and deal as much damage as possible and try and win the game. It was just a very different game plan from what I think David was used to, with going with that Glimora tactic first, poisoning, and then Dondozo just being able to clean up there.
Which worked quite nicely for him, right? Yeah. So you're able to start whittling down all of the defensive switches that Edward could actually go ahead and take advantage of, because that was the thing about it. He knew when he needed to make the appropriate switches, but the important thing is the fact that he was sort of in a position where he could take advantage of those resources. So you need to try to get that very quick KO if you can, or at least get some sort of poison that could start wearing down the resources available from Edu's side.
Exactly, and we have seen in the way that Eduardo has trained his Pokemon as well, the Iron Bundle still being faster, the Floodmane also being faster, but bulky enough to take at least 2 Earthquakes as well, which is something that is also important, even though it is a move that hits both targets and gets a little bit less damage out when it's a single target move, but it is still respectable to see that it take that, honestly.
Well, I think that's the thing about having a booster energy Fluttermane. You can actually go ahead and get a bit more investment spread out on different sort of various training methodologies or areas with stats. So you get the boost from the booster energy, you heighten the appropriate stat that you're trying to target for. In this case, it was a special attack. So that does give a bit of an indication that, okay, you know what? This is either going to be full damage or this is going to be a bit of damage, respectable, higher than normal, but I want to also reallocate a bit of the bulkier sort of training onto different aspects of it.
And that is an interesting way to see, because because in the beginning of the meta game, we have seen a lot of very offensive. We have seen choice specs already today as well, but abusing that photosynthesis as well with the sun, trying to do as much damage. And then you have the other way around, as you said it, like, okay, I have the boosted energy, I do plenty of damage, I do enough, and now I'm trying to make sure that I can survive enough attacks as well, which is quite important as well.
Exactly, and we saw a lot of different interesting situations with that. Of course, Edu was able to go ahead and run away with this 3-0, like we mentioned. Quite a few multi-international trainers that we have at the forefront going into this event. We will be wanting to go ahead and hearing from him shortly, as I believe the winner's interview is still being set up at the current moment. But are there any sort of shout-out situations that you saw that you want to highlight during that set from either trainer?
We have seen, like, the main thing being that critical hit on the Among Us game 1, very important to have. And then, of course, the game 3, the freeze was... those were probably the 2 most important turns there to try. That sometimes Lady Luck shines another way, and like the game shifts just because of that, and that is just a coin flip that can happen, and you try to see as well as you can how that goes. But,
exactly. Yeah. That's just the game we play, right?
That's the game we play.
A lot of people agreeing with me in chat there. But what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and cut straight to the couch area where we're going to be hearing from the man himself, Edu. So we'll catch and throw straight over there.
Hello, Pokemon trainers. I'm sat here with Eduardo Cunha, your winner of Swiss Round 3, and of course, the reigning world champion. It's fantastic to have you here, Edu. How are you doing?
Thank you very much. I'm doing very well. I'm doing better than I expected, honestly. I was very nervous going to the tournament. It's always hard playing, like having, obviously suffering with success, but it's always hard to keep up the level after such a high peak. I struggled with that a lot, like back in 2016 when I got top 4 at Worlds. I know I struggled a lot because I put a lot of pressure on myself. And I've been trying not to do the same now, and I'm glad that I haven't, at least so far, I haven't really been, hurting myself too much.
Absolutely. I can't imagine the pressure you must feel going in with that title on your shoulders. So, talking about that last match, something I have to call out immediately, that substitute on the Flutter main. Tell us about your thought process behind that.
So, I really like, I honestly, substitute is a move that I'm almost... I maybe like too much. I used it in 2016 when I got top 4. I used it to win Worlds, and I love that move. I just ends up being on my favorite team somehow. And I was thinking that in that game, since Fluttermane has such low HP, it actually takes a lot, like almost no recoil from poison and from the sub. So it was kind of tricky because it looked like it was actually would take too much damage from the poison if I subbed, but I figured it would be a nice opportunity. Like he's probably going to protect, trying to stall out get some leftovers and make sure he can take the double up. And I might capitalize on that and get a substitute up, and that's how substitute can work sometimes. Even if they know about it, it's really like you still have to call it. And there are some positions where you can just sub for very safely, like I did in Game 3, right? Where I just could substitute, and worst case scenario would have been if he made the crazy play of doubling my Flutter main with no Terra, no switching into Tatsugiri, just going Wave Crash, headlong rush into my Flutter main. I figured that was unlikely, so I thought substitute would be very safe. And the bulk really came through, too, because I was able to live the Earthquake right after. I was very, very happy with that. But I just, it's such a great move. I love using it, and that's a big reason why. It's easy to go for safe plays with it and get a lot of gain out of it.
Oh, there you go. Take from the world champion. Substitute is a move that you want to have on your team. Possibly you need to be as expert a player as Eduardo in order to run it properly, though. That's another thing I noticed, the bulk on that Flutter main. It's obviously it's not a Pokemon that we tend to, especially on the physical side, that we tend to see surviving that many hits. I want to talk as well about in Game 3 there, you made the call to terrestrialize your Iron Bundle, go for the Earthquake on the Garchomp. What were the thoughts going through your head?
So basically, I was pretty sure like Earthquake with Life Orb, even with Kingamit's insane defense, was very likely to be very close to KOing. I basically only needed just a little bit of help, and to make sure I didn't risk an Hydro Pump, right? I went for the strongest hack rate move that I had available to get that at chip, so I could get it in range of Earthquake. Even if they lived, they had to take Rough Skin, and after Rough Skin, I was pretty sure that would just knock out the Kingambit, and then it was just a Garchomp against a Great Tusk, which outspeed got the KO, and I would just win. And the only way that could potentially not work would be if they went for well, first of all, if I somehow didn't KO with the freeze dry plus the earthquake, and then the Cataclysm crit my Garchomp. So I liked my odds there. If they sucker punched my bundle, I would be able to get 2 earthquakes off with my Garchomp, so I would definitely be able to KO the King Gambit. And also, if they ended up going for a Protect with King Gambit, I would get a knockout on Great Tusk, and then it would be a single target earthquake, so I was very sure they would KO, and even if it didn't, the rough skin would have been enough. So that was the thought process. I just need that little bit of chip, and I was like, I don't need to Terra the Garchomp. Fire Terra does absolutely nothing for me. So might as well get that extra damage, and that was the thought process, basically.
Yeah, fair enough. It's such a fascinating insight into the minds of one of the great Pokemon players of our time. And, of course, another thing that happened on that turn 3 was the crit of the Earthquake into the King Gambit, which may or may not have mattered, but something that certainly did help you as well in that game 3 was the freeze on the Dondozo there. Obviously, freezes are never something you rely on, but when you saw it come out, how much of a boost did that give you?
So I think it still depended a lot on how... I just knew I'd probably had the game locked up, but it really depends on what Kyrie went for on that turn. Because if there was a Wave Crash on my Garchomp, I was probably done. I was hoping that wouldn't be the case. But I honestly... It definitely helped. Carter himself said that it was fair because he got a very lucky game 1-2 with the crit on my Among Us, so it kind of evened out. And Dondozo, the thing is, I tried to use Dondozo a lot. I really like how centralizing it can be and the pressure that it inputs. But one thing that I found is that, well, the 2 weaknesses that I found on Dondozo, and the reason why I ended up not bringing it, were perfectly showcased in the set, because the first one was the weakness to Amoonguss, because even if you're on Terra Grass, which I did test, you might be able to ignore the Amoonguss, but once the Dondozo is gone, you still need the rest of the team to beat Amoonguss, right? Because you didn't deal any damage to the Amoonguss itself. And it's easy to force positions like the Pollen Puff. So if you're not effectively getting rid of the Amoonguss, you're still having a problem. That was one of the issues. The second issue was that it's just so vulnerable to the RNG, right? Because you're there for so many turns, taking so many hits. And it was crazy because I hit it so many times, I didn't get a single crit, right? And you're taking I was actually like kind of hoping to even out the crit game 1 that I would get a crit myself. That's not how odds work, but I was hoping. But I didn't get a crit, but I did get a freeze, and that's the weakness of Dondozo. You're taking so many hits that eventually you're gonna get bad luck to you. So that was kind of. I mean, I felt bad obviously because it's never good to win just because of that. But I think that's one of the biggest weaknesses of Dondozo. It's so good, but you're taking so many hits, it's likely to happen.
Exactly, yeah, you're sort of making that RNG happen for you, and it's never something you want to see, and especially in a meta where Iron Bundle is so prevalent, running Freeze Dry, it's, Dondozo compared to Regulation A seems not to be as strong.
Yeah, I definitely, like every time I try to use Dondozo, it seemed that like every session, at least twice, I would get either crit or frozen by freeze dry. And the crit is so overwhelming because it goes from doing like a third to basically almost OKOing. It's insane. Yeah. So it felt pretty bad when I used it myself. So I mean, I feel bad for Carter, but it's the reason why I didn't bring it myself. I like this idea of Terra. I saw his idea of Terra Blast, Terra Grass, Dondozo in practice at Bochum, I think it was, and I really liked it. I tried it myself, but again, those 2 factors really made me not bring it. But I really liked this team. It was really cool.
Yeah. Of course, this was a match in which you lost the first game. Going into game 2, how did you feel you adapted your strategy? What did you then learn that you had to do differently?
I mean, that game 1, I feel like I played almost as well as I wanted. I had him what I wanted him. It's just a Wave Crash crit got my Among Us, and that changed the match completely. And I was very close to getting a knockout on the Dondozo too, so things were actually pretty close. So I felt like if I kept my strategy, I'd be fine. Excuse me. Talking too much.
I'm so sorry, that's my fault.
No, that's... The thing is, that was one thing I wasn't very happy with how things developed, which was how quickly I lost Garchomp and how I was forced to switch Among Us out to remove the toxic spikes. So I was trying to think of ways that I could more safely switch the Among Us out and back in, and that was how I figured I had to adapt. But, because one of my key strategies was forcing the Terra on Glamorta so that the Dondozo then couldn't Terra. And that was what I had in mind going into game 1. And I wanted to repeat that. So that's why I always led Garchomp. But it was hard to do because obviously if I lead a Mungus, I'm not, something's getting poisoned if I hit the Glamora. So there's a bit of a mind game there, and that was the only thing I thought I had to really fix, because I felt like my game plan was fine as long as I kept my level of play.
Yeah, I see. Well, it's fantastic and fantastically well adapted as well. You touched earlier on the pressure that you feel coming into a tournament like this, being the world champion. I mean, tell us, after you won the World Championships in London in 2022, did you enjoy having a bit of a break from playing Pokemon?
Oh, yeah. It gave me time to really let it sink in. Because the thing is, I lived something similar, and I'm very happy I didn't win Worlds in 2016, because I feel like I wouldn't have been able to really handle it. It's the kind of pressure that it's just like you still don't really believe that we've done it, and it's good that I had this 6-year break, or not break, but like this 6-year gap between my top 4 and my win, because it let me really mature and understand the value of my accomplishments. So I wouldn't feel like I wouldn't feel too cocky about my win. I would know how hard it can be and how I can struggle sometimes too, even if I'm the best, and how winning one tournament doesn't mean that I'm going to win every tournament, and how I can struggle. I can come to this tournament and completely bomb. It's part of the game. It's part of any competition. And he gave me the maturity to really handle the pressure a lot better, because top 4 back then was already so hard for me. I went into every local thinking, I must win, right? I'm by far the best Portuguese player. I'll come out winning every single local. And that was a very unhealthy mentality. And I'm happy that I can handle it a lot better now. And that's why I think it was a lot better of a timing for me to win Worlds. I was able to really let it sink in, process everything. I was actually hitching to come back to tournaments. I really wanted to play again, and I was actually kind of sad that I wasn't able to go to any of the other tournaments, and I almost didn't make it to the registration of EUIC, but I managed to make it in. So I'm just I'm happy to be back, and I want to keep playing.
Yeah, that's a really mature, considered response there. It's you know, everyone here to a certain extent is gunning for the world champion, but it's also not a title to be taken lightly, I think, as we've heard from Eduardo there. Well, and it's fantastic that you have registered for EUIC as well. What are your thoughts with Regulation C approaching?
I'm kind of scared. It's crazy how they're going to centralize everything with Pokemon with just one type. Kind of makes things a bit awkward. I don't know. It's just like they share so many weaknesses, but at the same time, you kind of want to have multiple of them on the same team because they're so strong. So it makes a very weird dynamic that we're not used to, and I think that's going to shake things up very nicely. Could be interesting. I mean, we don't know. I don't really know how it's going to turn out. I haven't played too much of it. I played a little bit. I'm still trying to figure out the patterns and what is the right or the best way to approach the format. It seems fun. I think there are a lot of different takes. People like Woshi and more because it slows down the game, and other people prefer the more offensive Chen-Pao, and I think it kind of gives us options, right? We can either go with a team that is more centered on offense or defense. And it's not like you have to run multiple of them on your team. So I think it's gonna calm down once it gets played more, settle down, and maybe won't see as many of the ruined Pokemon in the same team. But I think it's gonna be fun. It's always fun to shake it out. I mean, I don't like how quickly things sometimes change, but I think it's only like 3 formats.
Yeah.
I think it's mostly fine. A lot like we had in 2019 with the Sun, Moon, and Ultra series. I think that was fine. I wish we could have maybe a little more time with the series that we're having, because I think things can develop, like formats can develop a lot more than they have. But I think it's still fun to try different things, and it's like the format is evolving. It's not like they're completely different formats; we're just slowly adding new things. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Okay. Based on what you said there, just one final question: whenever the format does change, how much are you looking forward, based on this year so far, how much have you been looking forward to that change, and how much have you been thinking, oh no, I've just sort of got the hang of this one, and I keep want to pushing my momentum with this regulation?
So one of my favorite parts of every format used to be figuring it out, because I've always felt like I was really quick on understanding how a format works and picking out the best strategies. Especially because I've been playing for so long, it's just, the knowledge, kind of, the patterns repeat. The thing is, lately I haven't had as much time, and I actually kind of felt that a lot in this format, or at least in this new generation. I definitely was feeling behind since I didn't have as much time. I had a lot of other commitments I wanted to attend to, and I definitely felt like I wasn't keeping up as well. So now I'm a little more hesitant compared to before. But I used to love it. It was be one of my favorite parts, getting to know the first few things and getting success with the new ideas. It used to be fun. Now it is still fun. It's just I'm not as successful. It's fun because it's new, not fun because I'm good with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I could keep talking to you all afternoon, Eddie. That was a fantastic insight into your thought process there.
Thank you very much.
One final thing, any shout-outs you want to give to people watching?
A huge shout out to my girlfriend who actually came with me, and she's been supporting me so much. I've actually felt like quitting a few times because I'm like, I've hit my max, I've hit my top, I think I'm good. But she keeps me going, and she's right there supporting me. My mom, I keep shouting out my mom, but I'll never get tired of it because she's my rock. She keeps me going every time. And all my friend groups, Gaspacho, the Portuguese crew, Boyama, all the people that keep supporting me, and obviously my Twitch subscribers and viewers. Thank you all so much. And thank you for always supporting me.
Well, there you go. Some really heartfelt shout-outs there, and wonderful to hear from Edu. We're going to cut to a quick break, but don't go anywhere because we have so many more matches coming up for you today, and what a way to have started the day with 3 fantastic rounds of Swiss. Stay tuned.